Well, good morning, everyone. And once again, welcome to another live. Hope you're having a great start to your day. And as usual, we'll wait for a few folks here as I have my vitamin C this morning. Good morning, Wendy and Andrea and Nick from our staff. How are you? Joanne, Rosalinda, Niagara Falls, John, Elgin, Illinois, Gloria, Frank, good morning, and Kevin. Nice to have you guys on. Sue, how are you? Halifax, and she says it's sunny in Halifax. Another Nicole, good morning. Yolande, bonjour. And Joanne. And Mary, good morning. Connie, how are you? Deb, Timmons, Ronaldo, and Holly, and Brahim, Portland, Oregon. Nellie, how are you? Catherine, Springdale, Newfoundland. Carol, Bernice, and Ines, how are you? Maria. And Fran, Orangeville, brutally cold, -14. Woo! Nancy. And Elaine. Terry. And Karen. Coldwater. I bet you it is cold this morning. Lou. Ella. Bernadita, how are you? Mark, Micheline, bonjour. Judy and Deb, good morning. Vitamin D from Detroit. Yes, Maria. Zienne, bonjour. And Blair. And Michelle, Mark, Connie, and me. Good to have you on. Okay, Tammy, couple more and let's get going. Rita, and Nick, another Nicole. 3 Nicoles that I saw this morning so far. Judy from Alberta, and Regina, Dale, good morning. Nancy. I hate to miss you guys. Maricar. Now, where are you from? Maricar. Carol and Donna and Marilyn. You guys are so appreciated. Diane and Tammy. Tammy from Timmins. Well, and Elkie, good morning. Barbara. Okay, what we're going to look at, there's it was an article, not a study, that came out, and I flagged it on the weekend, and I thought, we're just going to go over this again. I think it's significant because it's big time relevant, and we want to do a little bit of a deep dive this morning into autism. Now, we've talked about it in the past, and I actually wrote about it in the Reset. Why do we see so much autism? But I want to give you what this article, and in 1975, okay, it said 1 out of 5,000 kids that were born had autism. I didn't even know it was that high, to be honest, because what I talk about is in the 1970s, if you were to go, and I'm serious, and look in an encyclopedia type of thing of, and in my medical textbooks, I never even saw autism. Now, I'm not sure. I guess there was some, but I never saw it. I wasn't even aware of it. But listen to this, okay? This is the newest statistic. So they compared it to 1975 said that 1 in 5,000 kids. I'm not going to question it. I don't know. It seems to me it would have been 1 out of 50,000 kids born in the 70s, but that's what they're saying. And what this research article talked about is in 2022. So hot off the presses. It's 1 out of 36 kids born. 1 out of 36 kids born are now in the spectrum of autism. And that begs the question, doesn't it? Why is that? Why is that? Why do we see so much today of autism when we didn't before? Okay? And that's what I want to talk about, because there's a reason for it. You know, the world's changed. We know that. I mean, the world's always changing. And, you know, now it's, you know, like it seems to change every year. But why so much autism? We could all have our opinions on it. And, you know, a lot of times if you Google it and you see gurus out there, they'll say, well, it's due to vaccination. You know, childhood vaccines. And to some extent, that may be true in the sense that when I was a little kid, okay, I want to tell you what happened in the 1950s or even 60s. Children would get a couple of vaccines too in their first couple of years. And now it's what, 50 something vaccines in their first couple of years. But, okay, don't get upset with me. I'm going to tell you that that is not, in my opinion, the straw that breaks the camel's back. I believe that it doesn't come from that. And I want to talk about autism being an autoimmune disorder. Now, we had a little bit of, I pontificated on our private Facebook. And guys, beautiful. Private Facebook group. Asked a very, because some naturopath or some doctor or whatever told one of our members that they shouldn't be taking probiotics if they have Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid disorder. Well, I beg to disagree with that. And I actually put it. Because I understand why they say it, okay? And I understand, Health Canada, for example, they have labeling requirements. So, if you wanna do business in Canada, and by the way, Health Canada, okay, has done really good work when it comes to natural products, okay? And I remember giving input into the committee. Now you're talking about, go back into the 1990s, okay? And they were looking at regulating the natural product industry. And Canada developed at the time a very, very high standard for natural products in Canada. If you want to sell products in Canada, you've got to go through Health Canada. And you know what? Actually, it was very good. It was very good for the industry. I was part of the industry. I was part of the process, and they were good at it. And they developed a whole, not comparing it to drugs. And they were light years ahead of their time. They really were, and I appreciate Health Canada for that. They really were. But they have some things that they make you put on the label, and it's for protection of the public. I understand that. Some things that they want, I don't agree with. For example, one of them is when you have an autoimmune disorder, well, you should talk to a healthcare practitioner before taking a probiotic. And I understand why they do it, but I want to tell you something, okay? Really important. The immune system, you know, one thing they say, and it's true, probiotics are really good for your immune system. So Health Canada goes, well, if you have an autoimmune, you don't want to increase your immune system. But the immune system is much more complex than that. Much more complex than that. It's not simplistic. Because I'm going to tell you something, any autoimmune disorder, you name it, and this is what I call autism. It's an autoimmune disorder. And I'm going to tell you where it starts. All autoimmune starts in the gut. Mummy's gut, baby's gut. Yep. It starts in the baby. Autoimmune is a gut. It's leaky gut. Now, please, you guys know this, but I'm going to reinforce it. Leaky gut doesn't necessarily mean digestive issues. You don't have to have digestive issues to have leaky gut, because our expression at the Martin Clinic is this: leaky gut, leaky brain. You might not have any digestive issues, but you can have leaky gut, leaky brain. That's autism. That's Parkinson's. That is MS. These are autoimmune disorders. Autism is an autoimmune disorder. Leaky gut, leaky brain. Leaky gut, leaky lungs. Leaky gut, leaky sinuses. Leaky gut, leaky skin. Leaky gut, leaky everything. Just about. So it's really important to figure this out. And this is why, and I've been very consistent about this, that I see autism as, and these numbers are more than frightening. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And why are these children today canaries in the coal mine? Well, I always say any autoimmune really is a perfect storm. It's never just one thing. But here's what we know, okay? Here's what we know. And if you're not sure, or you'd like to be able to read this, I wrote about it in the Metabolic Reset. So in the book, the Metabolic Reset, this is on page 46. Right after a chapter on Candida. Is it right after or right before? I have to, no, it's right before. So it's finishing up chapter 10 before we get into chapter 11 in the book. And here's what I said. And I'm doubling down on it. Okay? Because what they don't tell you in this paper that I gave to you this morning, 1975, 1 out of 5,000 kids are autistic, and by 2022, 1 out of 36. Wow. Like, it's incredible amounts. But this is significant for all of us, because I want to talk about the root cause. So let's just break down. I'm going to read, and then we'll talk about this a little bit. I'm reading from page 46 in the Metabolic Reset, but this is what I wrote down at the time when I wrote the book. Mummy of an autistic child. Okay, so here's what we know, and there's always exceptions. and then what we baby with autism. What are some of the consistent things? And I did it in a graph, and I split it. Mommy with autism, with an autistic child. What are the characteristics of mommy with an autistic child? Number one, okay? There's more than these, but here's what the world says. It's not what I said. Here's what medicine says about mommy with generally with an autistic child. One, antibiotics. Antibiotics, yes. Almost invariably, mommy in the year or two before pregnancy or during pregnancy, for whatever reason, had to take antibiotics. Now, what does that do? That destroys, in 5 days, destroys the microbiome, causes what we know as a condition, that this is actual medical condition, although medicine rarely ever talks about it, and that is a condition called dysbiosis. And what that is the microbiome has been compromised. Mommy has a compromised microbiome. Numero uno, antibiotics. Now, there are other factors, but antibiotics, wonderful, save millions of people's lives. The greatest discovery of the 20th century. But it has a double-edged sword. And what happens? Mommy, her microbiome has been compromised. She has a condition called dysbiosis, almost invariably. Okay? 1. 2, mommy, obese. It's almost, again, it's not always 100%, but mommy has problem with obesity. Makes them much more susceptible to having an autistic child. We'll talk about the reason. Well, as a matter of fact, I'm going to give you the reason right now. The third one that's written down there is insulin resistance. Remember what I said about the perfect storm? You take antibiotics, and by the way, there was a new one, and I'll comment on this maybe this week, but there's a new study out that shows women, as they get older, so over the age of 50, when they take an antibiotic, and this is, I'll show you the study probably later this week. When they take an antibiotic, become much more susceptible to cognitive decline. Antibiotics, cognitive decline. What? Why? Leaky gut, leaky brain. Leaky gut, leaky brain. Your gut isn't Vegas, Las Vegas. What happens in the gut stays in the gut. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. What happens in the gut travels. And more often than not to the brain. So when you take an antibiotic, you know me, I preach on this almost every day. You take an antibiotic. If you have an infection, I'm never telling a person not to take an antibiotic. They are a wonderful medication if you need it. Be careful that you don't have a virus and not a bacteria, because if you have viral, antibiotics do nothing. Secondly, take an antibiotic till the symptoms go away and then stop the antibiotic. And always, always, always take probiotics when you're taking antibiotics. Oh, doc, it'll just kill. I know, but you're introducing billions, and you better put billions in there every day if you're taking antibiotics so you don't get a condition called dysbiosis, which is an overgrowth of bad compared to good bacteria. And then remember, exclusive to the Martin Clinic, you get an invasion of the Third Army. I could write a whole book about that, guys. The invading forces of a Third Army, which is yeast candida. And I'm telling you, folks, I'm telling you, and I'll tell you again, that's what happens to an autistic child. Mummy, antibiotics, okay? I'm just telling you what they already know in medicine, although nobody talks about it. Mummy, obese. Mummy, insulin resistance, because that's obesity, guys. It's what I call diabesity. Most people have no idea that they're diabetic. I'm not a diabetic. My blood sugar is normal, Dr. Martin. But you still have metabolic syndrome. And you really are a diabetic. You just don't know it, because the last thing that happens is blood sugar goes up. It's the last thing that happens. Everything you own in your body wants to keep your blood sugar down. That's what we talk about all the time. But if you have insulin resistance, you're on your way to diabetes, and we call it diabesity. And that is, you really are, I hate to use the word but pre-diabetic, and you're gaining weight. Diabesity. It's a scourge in our society today, and it's one of the most common factors in autism. It's a perfect storm for autism. Leaky gut, leaky brain. Insulin is high, and that affects the placenta. Not just affects mommy, affects the placenta. Insulin has a job to do. It must get sugar out of the bloodstream, and it must take sugar out of the brain too. But if you have insulin resistance, insulin cannot cross the blood-brain barrier. It can't do its job. And the cognitive centers. You see, what happens in an autistic child is the hypothalamus, the cognitive area of the brain, gets affected. Especially the hippocampus. And these poor kids, it's like it's an epidemic today. And here we are in 2022. It's getting worse by the moment. And they're not doing, like, I know there's some well-intentioned, and when you have an autistic child, you know, society, you know, I don't know if it steps up the way it should. It probably doesn't, but they're waiting for autism, and then they do something. They spend money, and they have these programs, and I'm not against any of that stuff. Believe you me, I'm not. And I am very super sympathetic. But I want to prevent. I'm a big guy on preventing autism, and I believe you can do it. And that message has really not taken, is not taken seriously in our society. If these are the factors, antibiotics, and again, if you need an antibiotic, you got an infection, you got a raging bladder infection or whatever. I get it. But there's consequences. There's consequences to antibiotics. And one of them, and I believe this with all my heart, is why we see so much MS today. Why we see so much Parkinson's today in adults. Why we see so much, eczema and psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. These are all autoimmune, and Sjogren's and celiac and Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. In my humble opinion, it's all leaky gut. And I'm big on that. You better fix that. It's one of the seeds of disease is leaky gut. When you have your body, when undigested food and bacteria, viruses, and worse, yeast or Candida albicans gets into the bloodstream when it does not belong in the bloodstream. It becomes systemic. And mommy's pregnant and baby is in trouble. Probiotics, please. You want the baby to do well? Problem here, having connection problems. If you just saw that on your screen, sorry. I'm back. Okay? I'm back. Now, probiotics, absolutely key. You know me, I believe every person ought to take, and if you got autoimmune and Hashimoto's, please get on a probiotic. Don't listen to the nonsense that probiotics will increase your immune system in a way that will give you more autoimmune. It's I understand why they say it, but it ain't true. You need probiotics. Baby needs probiotics. Mommy needs probiotics. Baby in the placenta needs probiotics. Bacteria. We live in a world that they wipe out not only antibiotics, but chemicals. What are they finding in the placenta? Right? Chemicals. It's in the bloodstream. Plastics. They're finding it on Mount Everest and into the placenta. The highest point in the world and the lowest, the placenta. Good luck trying to get away from it. But that's what probiotics do. Broad spectrum probiotics will eat that stuff up. Take the chemicals out of the body. That's how good they are. And it will keep you away and keep baby away and keep mommy away from yeast getting into the bloodstream. You must rebuild the border wall between your gut and your blood. The gut-blood barrier. It's so key. It's so microscopic. It's less than it's submicroscopic. But we know so much more today than we did. But I used to tell people, if anybody wanted to listen to me, I've been consistent. Because when they were saying that, vaccinations or whatever, I used to say, no, it's leaky gut. It's antibiotics, It's the chemicals that we have. What are we at? 100,000 new chemicals today. And these kids are canaries in the coal mine. Hypersensitive systems. And then you add the perfect storm of insulin resistance. What does insulin resistance do, by the way, besides diabetes? It creates inflammation. Too much insulin. You're on a bad diet. You're secreting insulin. Squirt, 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 squirt to break down those carbs and sugars. And that's one of the factors in autism. Mommy is a bad eater. Mommy is a carbaholic. The perfect bad combination of omega-6 from vegetable oils, crappy foods, and sugars. And again, I'm going to make another point. The Frankenstein of sugars, high fructose corn syrup, I believe is the biggest reason that mommy has diabetes. Why does mommy have diabetes? Because mommy is taking too much high fructose corn syrup. It's the sugar in everything since the 1980s. And this is why, exponentially, this autism went like crazy with the advent of high fructose corn syrup. Takes a beeline, destroys your microbiome, and then heads off to the liver to be stored because it's fructose. That liver gets packed up. And baby's in trouble. Baby's in trouble. And there's no little red light going on. When mommy's pregnant, there's no light. Come on, say, be careful. This is why, in my opinion, you have to take the bull by the horns. And you got to do it yourself. And I counsel thousands of women over the years. Take probiotics. Get off the sugars, especially if you're drinking it. No soda, pop, no fruit juices. No more. No fruit smoothies. Don't do that. You're feeding yeast, first of all, and you're heading that fructose over to the liver in nanoseconds. It's not good for you. It's not good for the baby. So I was really big on that, probiotics. And here's what else. Here's what we found. Now, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Good question. But here's what I used to see. Mommy, very, very, very low in vitamin D. It should be a pre-screening to pregnancy. You know how they do that? They're checking, your folic acid and this and that. And I like that. But what they're not doing is checking vitamin D. That's key. Vitamin D is essential for mommy and baby. Very low levels generally. They got a candida. They got a yeast going on. It's spread to because of the antibiotics, chemicals that destroy. One thing we know about artificial sweeteners too. People know they drink diet pop. Yeah, well, that destroys your That destroys your microbiome. I don't drink sugar, Dr. Martin. I drink diet pop. Yeah, but it's still destroying your bacteria. We didn't even know that in the 1970s. We knew it. You know, people used to ask me in the 70s, what about, sucralose or aspartame? Or I said, well, it ain't good. Well, what's it do? We're not quite sure yet. But now we know. It absolutely disrupts your microbiome. It acts like an antibiotic. And people live on diet soda. The sugar, terrible, because it's high fructose corn syrup. And here's another thing that they found. Women have low levels of vitamin B12. When you have diabetes, generally you see low levels of B12. They don't eat enough vitamin S. They've been buying the lies since the 1980s. Don't eat red meat. Red meat's no good for you. Buying the nonsense. The BS. It is. You got all these millions of women. Well, red meat I only have red meat, Doc, once a week at the most. Well, you ain't getting B12. I always wonder, if God put B12 only in red meat, why would he tell you not to eat it? I can't understand that. If God gave you a gallbladder, use it. You know how many hundreds of thousands of women have lost their gallbladders? Because they don't use it. Use it or lose it. God gave you a gallbladder. That means you got to eat meat. There's no exception to it. Mommy deficient in vitamin D. Mommy deficient in B12. Mommy's got leaky gut. And baby gets autism. I rest my case. Listen, I'm very sympathetic. It's a scourge in our society today. Okay, now, have you signed up for our webinar? Wednesday night. You get Tony Jr. starring the brains of the operation. Dr. Martin, what do I call him now? Junior? He's got a grandson who's Anthony Martin the fifth. What do I call him now? Junior? Senior? I'm senior. Oh. Talk about being confused. Have you signed up for the webinar 7 p.m. Wednesday night? Don't ask me how to sign up. I don't know. Ask the girls. Okay. And okay. Now, guys, are you so you can sign up, okay? So that's this week, Wednesday night. Okay? Plan on being on every morning this week, okay? Planning on it. The plans of mice and men, right? Don't always work out. Okay, guys. We love you guys. We mean that, and we appreciate you very much. Talk to you soon.